Sometimes when we as ordinary citizens survey the monumental problems that are arrayed against us, it's almost overwhelming. But that's to be anticipated because we're not facing ordinary enemies. The Bible clearly says that we're not just fighting against flesh and blood, but against the unseen rulers and powers of this world. Nowhere is this phenomenon more pronounced than in an area in which the United States is intimately involved, the Middle East. The largest terrorist attacks ever to hit the U.S. was planned and supported from the Middle East. We have been actively fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan for almost 10 years. Iran and Syria have planned, supported, and executed terror attacks against us even longer. The Bible teaches that there are mighty demonic powers that are assigned and operate behind the human rulers of nations. And that, if the Lord did not restrain these unseen forces, the world would be destroyed. The Apostle Paul talks about the mystery of lawlessness that is already at work even in his time. And as I said last week, the restrainer, who is the Holy Spirit, is going to be soon removed. And then the forces of evil will bring about a global holocaust. In the Old Testament, God revealed to Daniel why his urgent prayers were not answered for 21 days. An angel sent from God appeared to him and said, "Do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. But the prince, or archon, we'll find out in a minute, of the kingdom of Persia withstood and resisted me 21 days. And behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the kings of Persia." There are actually many passages in the Bible that speak of the well-organized system of fallen angels that we also know as demons. They influence and deceive human leaders of nations. The only ones they don't control are dedicated Christian leaders. But however, even they are harassed and sometimes deceived by these relentless evil spiritual beings. And the higher a man's place of authority and power is, the more he will be attacked. The Apostle Paul shows that these demons are organized into several levels of power and authority. He wrote, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places." Now, there are 4 levels of authority that you can see in those verses. Paul speaks first of the rulers. These are what we call the archons, which is the Greek word that is translated rulers. And it refers to the highest level of rank and authority. Satan is called the archon or ruler of the demons several times in the Gospels. Under Satan are demon archons that are rulers over various geographical locations. Demons are apparently very territorial and remain in authority over the nation or city to which they are assigned. This is more clearly presented in the parting words of the angel who spoke with Daniel. Then he said, "Do you know why I have come to you? And now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I have gone forth, indeed, the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is noted in the scriptures of truth. No one opposes me against these demon rulers except Michael, your prince, who is known as the chief archon of the angels." The angel revealed to Daniel that the first great king, turned out to be Alexander the Great, would rise during the reign of the 4th Persian king after Darius the Mede in Daniel chapter 11, verses 1 through 3. Daniel predicted this to Darius, but the angel predicts in Daniel chapter 10, verse 20, that it would be the demon ruler of Greece that would empower and inspire Alexander to conquer more than any man in history. But I take at face value every statement, the Bible, as God's truth, and believe it. Let me show you something else about these demon archon rulers that is mind-boggling. In Revelation chapter 9, verses 14 through 18, 4 particularly violent and powerful demon rulers are mentioned as bound at the great river Euphrates. God has bound certain particularly powerful demons in order to restrain them from prematurely destroying the planet. It is his ministry of restraining evil. But just listen to what is predicted in Revelation when the 6th trumpet of judgment is sounded. Release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates, and the 4 angels who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year were released so that they would kill 1/3 of mankind. The number of the armies of the horsemen was 200 million, and I heard the number of them. Note that these 4 mighty angels had been apparently bound at the banks of the river Euphrates for centuries. Yet now they are released to perform a ghastly deed which God had prevented them from doing until a specific year, month, day, and hour. That is to kill 1/3 of the world's population. For this task, the 4 mighty fallen angels immediately gather an army of 200 million soldiers from east of the Euphrates River. Now, I say east because he then reveals that these are the kings of the east that are predicted in Revelation 16, verse 12. And the 6th angel poured out his bowl upon the great river, the Euphrates, and its water was dried up, that the way might be prepared for the kings from the east. No other part of the world has countries that could supply 200 million soldiers other than the East, particularly China and possibly India with them. Historically, God never permitted powers from the East to successfully invade and take over the Western civilizations on the western side of the Euphrates. The powers from the Orient were prevented from successfully conquering and setting up their civilization in place of the West. And this is because God fixed a boundary there. But when the restrainer of evil, the Holy Spirit, is removed from his ministry of restraining by the rapture of the church, all hell will be systematically released. And thus, 1/3 of mankind was killed by these 3 plagues, by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone which proceeded out of their mouths. You know, I believe these are symbolizing a nuclear holocaust. The Apostle John actually saw this horrible destruction as he did the many other things in the book of Revelation. He describes it in terms a first century man would use to describe it, by using images that were familiar to him. I believe that the 7-year tribulation in which these things will happen is very near.